Hey guys, Coach Eric Rosa here with my good friend and client Mark Durando. Today is Saturday, so we're basically 1 week out of the NPC Ferrigno Legacy, Palm Springs. And today we are working sort of like upper back traps, rear delts, those areas. We want to bring out a little bit more separation in the areas of the upper back, so the back double bicep shot and looks better. This first exercise that we're doing is a little bit different. It's done on a machine that people normally just do shrugs on, but you'll see Mark's going to lean forward just slightly and is going to make it into a combination of a row and a shrug all in one. So it's like a hybrid movement. And this works the very upper back and the traps in the back area to help them get that 3D effect. You can use a lot of good weight on this movement. You want to squeeze at the top and make sure you're using a full range of motion, and Mark will demonstrate that for you now. Hey guys, so I want to show you another exercise. Well, I've got my good buddy Mark Durando here so he can demonstrate for me. This exercise, it's a little hard to explain until you see it. It's done on an incline bench facing a high pulley, and we use a rope. And it's somewhere, I guess, another hybrid movement in between, almost like a high pulley row and a pull down at the same time. What we want to do with this movement is we want to stress the very upper back muscles, the upper traps, the middle traps, the rhomboids. Really bring out that detail in the middle back, so when you hit a back double bicep, you see every little muscle group. This one, you feel differently than almost any other movement. It really is a unique movement. You can't go too heavy, because then you won't be able to get that full squeeze at the bottom, and you really want to hold that squeeze at the bottom and get a full stretch at the top. So watch Mark do this exercise, and then give it a shot if you really need to build up your upper back.
Hi Big E. So we just we had the chance to have Mark Durando with us, you know, for a little bit of training, just about a 1 week out from the Ferrigno. What do you feel about his progress this year? It's been about it's been about 6 months, right? Because he competed in
He did the West Coast
June.
Classic.
That's right. Yeah. And he looked great. Placed very well over there. Seems to have made a lot of progress. How do you feel about this show coming up for him?
Well, I was real happy with the West Coast Classic. He placed second in open bodybuilding, and I think he was fourth in the Classic. But I felt it could have been a little bit harder, a little bit tighter. I think it was his best look yet, but you know, obviously being a coach, what you want to do is evaluate every show and think about what you could do for the next show. The problem with this show was actually, many people wouldn't know, but Mark's had a problem with a hernia, and it was actually severe enough that it suggested to him to have surgery. And he was going to have surgery, and we were going to actually end up skipping the Ferrigno. So it wasn't really until about, and I kept him in pretty good shape regardless, but it wasn't until about 8 weeks out that we decided to still do it. He decided he was going to put his surgery off until after the Ferrigno was over, because it was a show that he really wanted to do, and he was already looking great. So the prep was a little bit difficult in terms of my programming his training, because there's a lot of movements that I had to watch out for that would be dangerous for him or that could aggravate the hernia. So a lot of key movements were taken out. However, obviously I made up for it in other ways, and we did a lot more. We slowed down the reps a lot more. We did a lot more squeezing, did a lot more stretching, just so he wouldn't have to use weights that were as heavy as normal and put a lot of pressure on his abdominal region. So it actually worked out wonderful, because he looks very complete. His muscles are very full. He's probably the most conditioned he's ever been, and he's also at his highest body weight. I believe he was about 203 pounds a week before the show. Now as we sit here, we're actually talking about this just a few days before the show, and I think it's going to be a great showing for him. I'm very happy with certain body parts that really came up, and especially his back. His back is much more separated, a little wider than it's been before. He always had great quads, but there's more separation in the quads now, and he's now brought up his calves. His calves were behind. His quads were very dominating, so his hamstrings and calves needed to come up. His hamstrings and calves have come up. He's got some striation in his glutes. He's got ropes in his hamstrings, so I think everything's gone great. And now we're just putting on frosting the final week, and we're just just making a few little bit of adjustments just to make sure that he's 100%, but everything's right on target. And I think he's going to be the best he's ever been on stage at the Ferrigno. So we're very happy.
You're gonna have your hands full that weekend because you get a lot of people on the show talk about them.
Yeah, I have Mark, who's going to be doing both. Again, he's going to be doing both classic physique and bodybuilding. Mark he's got the kind of physique that can kind of do both.
He's a hybrid.
He's a kind of like a hybrid. So we're going to see where the judges, prefer him to be in terms of his placings. Last time it looked like bodybuilding they liked for him. So, but we'll see. And then we have Tamara Mack, who I've done the Ferrigno with her before, and she won her class there already in the open women's physique. We did not get the overall. But she's a lightweight. She's the smallest of the small, tiny little girl. Comes in completely shredded condition, and she's going to be shredded again. So we're looking forward to this one. Jason Hazard, who's going to be doing men's physique. He'll be at the show too. And finally, of course, last but not least for sure, it would be Lionel L. Train Brown, who's going into the pro show, the men's pro bodybuilding, and we've talked about him recently. He's looking the best that he ever has. So it's going to be an exciting weekend. But you're right, I will have my hands full with people. I'm going to have a lot of hotel rooms to go visit, and a lot of, I'm sure, panic states and texts and everything like that. But we'll hold it together, and we're just looking forward to a great show. And it's supposed to be the show is so epic this year with so many pros and so many amateurs. It's such a huge show with an expo and everything. I'm just looking forward to the whole weekend. So.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Yep.
All right, thanks, E. Okay, this is the Ask Merlin segment part of the show, you guys, and I'm actually going to ask Merlin today.
You're going to ask Merlin. You get to ask Merlin.
I still have questions after all this time. That's good.
All right.
So, sometimes people will tell you that certain kinds of protein will be more geared towards either off-season or mass building versus cutting and stuff. Do you agree with that? I mean, I know some people will say, okay, well, if I'm off-season, I'm going to eat a lot more red meat because I want to put on more size, versus chicken or versus turkey, which is leaner. Do you feel that all protein are pretty much all on the same level as far as what they do in the body, or do you feel like some are more preferable to cutting versus gaining size?
Well, I think that first of all, there is differences in the assimilability of how well we assimilate certain proteins versus others. Obviously, whey protein is very high up on the scale. Eggs are high up on the scale. Things like that. I mean, there's a whole scale of how so you have to look at that. But really, the truth of the matter is that with all the basic proteins that we eat, they're all important. And the reason why, for the off season, somebody would say red meat versus chicken is really because of the extra fat content that's generally in red meat. So they just think more fat content, more calories. So that's when you're trying to put on weight. So somebody wouldn't be eating. If you sat down to 8 ounces of tilapia versus 8 ounces of steak, you're going to be eating more calories when you eat steak. So if you're in the off season, you want to grow. But I mean, I don't necessarily think that that's so vital. Like you can grow off of eating fish, you can grow off of eating chicken, you can grow off of eating turkey, because you can always get your fats and your extra calories from other places, from your carbohydrates, or you can add essential fats in. Traditionally, people, there are some people who believe, and maybe it's something that would be an individual thing, somebody grows a lot better off of red meat if they find that they feel more anabolic from red meat. And maybe with their system, maybe their body assimilates red meat better than they assimilate chicken. But I don't think we can make a broad statement for everybody. Because I know, listen, there's bodybuilders out there who are, pesco vegetarians who only eat fish, or lacto-ovo vegetarians who only eat eggs, and they look, they're big. So I think the key is not really to think about the difference between off-season and in-season proteins. I have always said that I think it's best to try to mix your proteins for both, whether it be pre-contest or off-season, because all proteins have slightly different amino acid profiles, and I think in order to get the most complete amino acid profile, it's good to mix your proteins. So chicken at one meal, turkey at one meal, red meat at one meal, eggs at another meal, fish at another meal, if it's possible.
Plus you get less sick of your diet also.
Yeah, you get less sick of your diet. And there's some people who don't like this. Some people who like to stick to the same foods, and that's fine. If it's working for you, it's fine. I'm just saying what's optimal would be to switch your proteins around just for a better amino acid profile, for just having different tastes. The one protein that I would say would be essential to me, if it's digestible for you, is whey isolate protein. I believe that whey isolate, because of the fact that it's so high in the branched chain amino acids, especially leucine, and that's a key amino acid for growth. So that's the type of thing that will help you to add muscle mass and maintain muscle mass before a show. So whey protein is something that I believe is pretty vital to have in your program, especially if I was going to say at a particular time, it would be post-workout, which is when you want something that digests very, very quickly, which whey does, and that's when you want the most leucine, is right after a workout. So that's something that I would always include. But like I said, I'm not going to, you know, I don't really have, I mean, when I was younger, I would say that I would probably eat more red meat, you know, in the off season, because that was just tradition. But now what I've learned is, I think that just mixing up your proteins is the best way to do it, and there's no particular magical protein. Maybe the only thing I will say about red meat, and it's a little bit less important today than it was years ago, was the creatine content. And little did we know, you know, 30 years ago, that eventually we were going to have creatine supplements. So now you don't even necessarily need red meat for creatine content. So my advice would just be to mix up your proteins, whether in or off season. And if you're, you know, if you don't prefer to have those higher calorie proteins in the off season, you can always make up for the fats with essential fatty acids from different oils and from nuts, from avocados and things like that. And of course, you know, your carbohydrate content. So my advice, mix up your proteins as best as you can and really get that complete amino acid profile.
All right, thanks, Marlon.